there, I'm Dave, and I'm here to talk about a beautiful day, by the way. It's a little cold. I'm layered up. I've got 4 layers on, well, including a t-shirt, so 3 thicker layers because it's cold. I even brought a toque and some mitts, but I put them down there because it's not that cold. I mean, it's like 2 degrees maybe Celsius, so about 36 Fahrenheit, I think, something like that. Anyhow, here to talk about, I mean, I love it. Late January 2021, beginning of a new year, beginning of end of I think a pretty good month. Sun's coming out. It's a gorgeous day. Beautiful, calm day. No wind, no waves. Hope that's okay with you. Here to talk about the first Dave's Picks of the year, the first Grateful Dead release of the year. Dave's Picks Volume 37, a big one in the Grateful Dead world. As you know, the Dick's Pick series, which was an unbelievable, great series. It was where it started. It was created by my mentor, my friend, Dick Latvala, along with Kid and John Cutler. It ended at number 36. And we didn't really have a mark in mind of how long the Dave's Pick series was going to go, but as we kind of got into the 20s and 30s, early 30s, we said, oh, you know, it's going to pass 36 someday, and that's amazing. Because when we started Dave's Picks 10 years ago, we're in our 10th year now, we had no idea. I mean, I think we all kind of hoped it would go on for 100, and maybe it will. I hope so. But certainly we didn't have anything in mind. So the fact that we're at 37 now is amazing. Again, no end in sight. We've already pretty much put to bed number 38. We're putting a lot of work into number 39, really kind of narrowing that one down, the one that will come out in August. And then there's one in November. So it's a great year coming up for the Dave's Picks. And thank you for joining us for 10 years. We've brought the amount that we're producing up by more than double of where we started. We started the series with 12,000 of each of them. We're at 25,000. That's a testament to you and your support and your enjoyment of them, I guess. You keep being interested. We keep putting them out, and we love doing them. I mean, some people ask me, do we have a plan to release, let's say, a specific show? And the truth is we don't have any plans to release any specific shows, really, because we don't have a master list, which is to say every time we come to needing to produce one, we put a lot of work into every single one. It's its own release, its own production. It's not like we have a master list where we just kind of check it off. Oh, let's go with 41578. Let's go. Speaking of 41578, if you're watching this, you might already know that Dave's Picks number 37, volume 37, the first of the year, is April 15th, 1978 at William and Mary College in Williamsburg, Virginia. An incredible show, a very famous show. Going back to my tape trading days in the late 80s, it was the cornerstone of my spring 87 collection. It was part of that initial batch of Betty boards that came out. It's a tape that was returned to the vault. We'll get to that in a minute. Was brought back to the vault a few years ago, along with shows like Cornell and some of the other great things that we've released that hadn't been released from the kind of the June 76 box set. So there were a lot of shows brought back, including this William and Mary show. And I actually have some notes here. I have notes somewhere because I want to read an email. So a friend of mine, I had a feeling he was at this William and Mary show. We'll talk about the show in a minute, but I had a feeling this friend of mine was at this show. So I sent him an email while we were producing Dave's Picks 37, and I asked him, I said, hey man, I seem to recall you might have been there. He goes, oh, so here's what he sent me. I love this. I won't tell you who it's from until the end, although you're gonna probably pick it up while I'm reading it. Hey Dave, as a matter of fact, I was there, talking about William and Mary 78. I went with my drummer for 21 years, John Molo. I think I just gave it away. We started our band in 1977 when I graduated from UM. We stood up high looking down on stage right. Who would have thought that 9 years later we'd be opening for them, and 12 years later I'd be winging it with them as a part-time, most of the time, member for 19 months, and on, now and then after that. Bruce Hornsby. So Bruce Hornsby, as you probably know, he's a Virginia person, and he saw the Dead at William and Mary in 73. He saw them in 76. That was another Dave's Picks early on in the series. And then he was at this show. And you know, while I have your attention and we're talking about Bruce, I want to read you another email he sent as a follow-up to that. I love these stories. I love Bruce. He's a really wonderful guy. Everything that you might think about him is true, which is to say the energy he gives off on the stage in the videos you've seen, or if you saw him in concert, that's who he is. He's an incredibly positive, generous person, spent a lot of time writing these emails. So he wrote this. He said, one of the funniest related stories from that time. The year before, in 1977, the Dead played in Richmond at the Mosque. That was, of course, Dave's Picks Volume 1. Same day as Star Wars was released, May 25th, 1977. Our whole band at the time went to the gig with some of my brother's old UVA freak fraternity friends. Molo and Phil McCusker, guitar player at the time, were total jazzers and funk guys and knew very little about the Dead, although Molo had seen them in the early 70s at American University in DC, where he's from. That would have been the 1972 show. So various audience members all around us at various times during the show were screaming, "Stella! Stella!" And Molo and Phil looked at Bobby and me, that's Bruce's brother Bobby, and said quizzically, "These guys play Stella?" Being young jazzers, they thought the Deadheads were screaming for the old standard Stella by Starlight. Bobby and I knew what they thought Stella meant, so we played along and said, yeah, they play Stella. Molo and Phil shook their heads in amazement, and the show went on. We let them in on the joke after the concert. So anyhow, that's from Bruce. That little last story was unrelated to our show, but Bruce is such a good guy, I just wanted to share that with you. So Bruce was there. Wonderful memories. Wonderful guy. So William and Mary 78. We, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, a whole bunch of tapes, very important tapes, which is to say from important eras and important shows, all recorded by Betty, were returned to the Grateful Dead vault. Probably 3 years ago. That's when you started, like I said a few minutes ago, you started seeing Cornell coming out in Boston and Buffalo and New Haven. Shows like the June 76 box, some of the fall 77 that hadn't been in the vault before. What was Binghamton? So there were a few of those that came back, 1029 and DeKalb. So some really wonderful shows. And amongst those was the first half of the April tour. The Dead have always had the April 18th show in Pittsburgh onward from 78 in the vault, but the first batch of shows, April 6th through April 16th, were always missing. And so they've been returned. And so when we started looking at those for one of those as a release, it was tough because they're so good. Tough in a good way. It was hard to make that choice because whatever we release now is not being released now. But rest assured, if your favorite show isn't released and it's good and it's in the vault, someday it'll get released. We get asked that a lot as well. Do we have plans to release this show or that show? And again, we don't have a master list, but what we do, what I can tell you is that if it's a good show and we have good tapes, there's a high likelihood that it will be released someday. I just don't know when. So for now, this is the time, January or February 2021, it's time to release William and Mary 78. So we put a lot of listening, a lot of comparison listening, and this was the show. I've known this show, like I said, for over 30 years, 32, 33 years on tape. So it's been a show that's been strong in my mind for many, many years, decades. So as I've listened to it again more critically in the last 6 or 8 months, as we've prepared for Dave's Picks 37, I was reminded of how really great it was and why it was a cornerstone of my tape collection back in the day. And so this is a show, I'm not going to get too much into the details of it because you'll probably listen to it, we'll probably put some songs up to listen to. It's a show that opens with one of those typically hot 1978, which to me was the peak for this song, Mississippi Half Steps. And it is a song that hits that peak. And the first set's just filled with great music, including a really an interesting passenger. It's got a bit of a groove that kind of, they go so hard on it, they kind of lose it almost, but then they nail it again. I love when that happens, that they pull it back from the brink of disaster, which is not quite, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but then they end up pulling it out and really nailing it. There's an interesting Brown-Eyed Women where the drummers are playing a bit of a different beat than usual. I've never heard one like this, and it's incredible. It's really good, but it's a little different. And then the first set ends with the double barrel of an amazing, again, another song that to me really peaked at this time, Let It Grow, followed by a deal that has countless. In the 30s, I think, Don't You Let That Deal Go Down at the end. It is a powerful deal. Now, this is a couple years before Deal went into the big instrumental jam that you'd think of when you think of the 80s and early 90s and things like that, where the jam would go on and on, the instrumental jam, before bringing it back. In 77, 78, it's when they carried it on vocally, and it's incredible. Now, the second set, in typical form, is where it's at. And I mean, the first set is wonderful. It's really one of the best, to me, from this tour, one of the best first sets. The second set, got the kind of standard opener of The Birth of Good Lovin'. There's a really wonderful Candyman. Donna Jean gets to do Sunrise, and then one of my favorite songs, as you probably know, Playing in the Band. 1978 Playing in the Bands are interesting because they don't go to the deep space chaos. They're more introspective and jazzy. Like, they're really wonderful, beautiful moments. And I think of something like, there's one in February at Madison, Wisconsin, on February 3rd of 78. This one is very similar to that one, which is to say it's very meditative. I mean, it's incredible. I'm not going to liken it to Dark Star and call it Dark Star-esque, but it is very introspective, and they're listening to each other. It's a wonderful Playing in the Band. Then it goes into Rhythm Devils, and the reason I'm calling it Rhythm Devils and not drums, it was this very same tour when the drum duet that had been a part of the shows going back to 1976 when Mickey returned, through 77, generally the second sets, not all of them, you think of Cornell, it didn't have a drum interlude, but most shows in 76, 77 had some sort of drum interlude, whether it was Let It Grow in 1976, having a minute or two of drums, or in 77 where it would be more common to have a kind of a 3, 4, 5 minute drum duet with the two guys before they would kick into the other one or Not Fade Away or something like that. In April of 78, they extended that, and these little drum interludes became these bona fide major moments of Dead shows. They would clock in at almost 20 minutes by the end of this April tour. Generally about 10, 12, up to 14, 16 minutes. This one is probably about 15 minutes. And it wasn't just Billy and Mickey. They set up an array of percussion instruments, and everybody, not from the crowd, everybody from the band and the crew was invited to come up during this interlude and play. I've seen pictures of it. It's wonderful. I think there's one in the booklet of Jerry playing drums. Keith is up there. Everybody could just come up and play and be part of the drum duet, and that's when we started calling it Rhythm Devils. So you might notice for a lot of Grateful Dead shows, the drum interlude is called Drums with a capital D. And then for this tour and a lot of 1978, we actually call it Rhythm Devils because it is a different thing than just the drummers doing a little vocal interlude. Oh, I think I saw an otter over there. I'll try and pan the camera over if they're still there when I leave. Yeah, so the Rhythm Devils is unbelievable. Then I'm going to talk about two more little bits of music here. They come out of drums, out of Rhythm Devils, with one of those powerful, I think it's about 13 minutes, versions of Not Fade Away. One of these ones that I imagine these smaller places, this was, I think, about 8,000 or 10,000. It's a college basketball arena, William and Mary Hall at William and Mary College. It's so powerful, and the drums and Phil are laying down this incredibly huge beat of Not Fade Away, and then you've got Bob doing his incredibly intricate guitar work, and then you've got Keith also doing the same stuff over on this side and just really playing some wonderful keyboards. And then you got Jerry doing his thing, and then the vocals on it. The jams are both powerful, and he's doing some really serious shredding, and it's also some really great guitar soloing by Jerry, with the rest of the guys just doing some unbelievable music. Not Fade Away from 1978 is really one of my favorite in terms of powerful Grateful Dead songs. It's one of my favorites, up there with Samson and Delilah. Really, really great stuff. After that, after Not Fade Away starts trailing off. And, you know, at the time you're expecting Stella by Starlight. Now you're expecting Stella Blue or maybe Black Peter or possibly Wharf Rat. That was pretty much where this Not Fade Away would have gone at the time. And instead, you hear the unbelievable, unmistakable opening notes of Morning Dew. And you can hear, this is a board tape, a very good board tape, not a lot of audience in it compared to like some Matrix tapes, like Dave's Picks 36. It's a proper Betty board, but the crowd reaction was so strong to those notes, you can feel it. You can feel this energy. Now remember, the Dead in 1977 only played Morning Dew a handful of times. Some very famous ones. They played early in the year on February 27th. They played it at Cornell. They played it at Pembroke Pines, of course, Dick's Picks Volume 3. And they played it at Winterland on June 7th, opening night of the Winterland run in June of 1977. Then they dropped it, and it was gone. And then at William and Mary, they brought it back. And it is one of the most emotionally powerful, meaningful, strong, beautifully played versions of Morning Dew I've ever heard. Really, the peaks are where they should be. Everybody on stage is 100% present, which to me makes it feel like everybody in the audience, a sold-out crowd of 8,000 or 10,000, is also feeling 100% present in that moment with that Morning Dew. Now, this Morning Dew, again, I've heard this phrase, it's one for the ages. And it is. But they then dropped Morning Dew after this version, and they didn't play it again for a year and a half. The next time they played it was at the Cap Center on my birthday, actually, on my 9th birthday. I wasn't there, I was only 9. But on November 8th, 1979. So a full year and a half later is when they brought Morning Dew back again. And then by 80 is when it kind of came back into the repertoire more consistently, 80, 81. But yeah, so Morning Dew between Winterland in June of 77 and Cap Center 79, a 2.5 year span, they only played it once. Time, and it was this version, and it's really good. That's the cool thing about it. So this show wraps up with some rock and roll, and as you'd expect from Bob Weir rocking out down the place. Now, it's a relatively short show, and when I say that, I think it clocks in about 2.5 hours of music, which when you have a 3 CD set, you can get about 4 hours of music on there. So we don't like to leave too much dead space sometimes. So what we've done, there's another show 3 nights later at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. And it is a show that I've always loved the highlights of. I don't think the show itself would, I'm certain the show, well now I can tell you with certainty, the show itself will never be released in its entirety. I never viewed that Pittsburgh show as that. It was a show that I always, I've played some of the songs at DJ things that I've done at bars and at events and things, where I've DJ'd with some of the Pittsburgh stuff. The highlights are to me some of the best highlights of April 1978, but the show itself is pretty good, but not quite to the level of some of the other shows on the tour. So it was never going to be released. So what we've done is we've included, I think, close to an hour, more than an hour of the Pittsburgh show on April 18th at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. You might have noticed, if you've seen the cover art to Dave's Picks 37, a couple deadheads in their college dorm waiting for the show, there is on the bulletin board a Pittsburgh Penguins NHL hockey logo. And that's what this is about. People wondered, well, why was that on there when they first saw the artwork? It's because we've put music on there from the Pittsburgh Penguins arena, the Igloo, the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. Dana, this one's for you. And it's a really, really wonderful batch of music to round out the magnificent complete show. As you know, the Dave's Picks are complete shows, which William and Mary most certainly is. But we're also getting an hour plus of the Pittsburgh show, and it's really good. Again, the highlights are to me some of the best of the tour. The show itself is pretty good. The show is very good, but there's so many other great shows on this tour that will be released someday in their entirety, both the April and the May tours from 1978. We decided to get that music out now. It was I think the perfect time to get some of that stuff out from the Pittsburgh show. So Dave's Picks 37. If you've got this far into this, I usually try to remind you to maybe put this on pause and go to dead.net and pick it up if you're interested in Dave's Picks 37, because they sometimes sell out in a week, sometimes in a day or two, and I think Dave's Picks 36 sold out in a matter of hours, a couple hours or something like that. So I would recommend, if you're watching this, to check out, to go over to dead.net and pick it up, because it will sell out. It definitely will sell out quickly. And if you subscribe to the Dave's Picks, here comes the wind. If you subscribe to Dave's Picks 2021, you will be getting it regardless, so don't worry about that. But if you didn't subscribe, and that's okay, you do have time, I think, if you're watching this, to go over to dead.net and pick it up, because it will sell out quickly. It's really a wonderful, wonderful show. It's great music, loud on a home stereo. It's great music for when you're driving. This is This is good, powerful, high energy Grateful Dead at one of their many peaks. The April '78 tour is certainly one of them. They take a lot of chances. Most of the time they're successful. I mentioned The Passenger, where they just kind of get out by the skin of their teeth. It's really amazing the chances they take, like Morning Dew, playing Morning Dew for the first time in a year on stage. Like I think Morning Dew is a pretty straightforward song, except to bring the emotion that Morning Dew needs. I don't think it's that easy at all. And so they do, and they do bring the emotion, they bring the passion. So you're in for a treat. If you subscribed, you're cool. If you didn't subscribe, you're still really cool. Don't get me wrong. But you need to go over to dead.net and pick it up if you want this one. Oh, a couple hummingbirds. They kind of do this matrix thing, you know, they kind of hover in the air and then buzz off quickly. It's pretty neat. Anyhow, nope, I don't see the otters anymore. They were over there, actually. So I won't be turning the camera around, but thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us on our 10th year of the Dave's Pick series. Unbelievable, it really is. Number 37. Number 38, as you probably know, is the show from Nassau Coliseum. September 8th, 1973. We've got a lot to talk about with that one, but that's in a couple months. In about 3 months, we'll get to that. There's a great Dick Latvala story that I want to tell about that one, but we'll get into that at another time. So thank you very much for joining us, both today and for the last 10 years. Hopefully 10 more. That's kind of what we're focusing on. There's a lot of good music left in the vault of this quality. So if you keep checking it out, we'll keep putting it out. So thank you very much. I'm Dave, Dave's Picks 37, available at dead.net exclusively. Check it out. It's an amazing show. William and Mary College, April 15th, 1978. All right, we'll see you here next time.